Most people blame aging for their slow thinking. They're wrong. Here's what the research actually shows. The cognitive decline most people over 60 experience is not primarily driven by neuronal death. It's driven by something happening in the brain's white matter, the communication highways between neurons. A 2019 study published in Nature Neuroscience found that white matter degradation begins accelerating significantly around age 58. And the primary driver isn't time. It's inflammation, chronic, low-grade, invisible neuroinflammation that most doctors never test for and almost nobody talks about. That changes today. My name is Dr. Elias Thorne. I'm a clinical neurologist based in Chicago, Illinois. I've spent over 22 years studying how the aging brain loses, and in some cases recovers, its processing speed, memory clarity, and executive function. In my practice, more than 1,400 patients over the age of 60 have come to me with the same complaint. My mind doesn't feel like mine anymore. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly why that happens, and what the biology actually says about it. Let me be direct with you. Brain fog after 60 is not a mystery. It is a mechanism. And once you understand the mechanism, everything changes. Here's what's happening inside your skull right now if you're over 60 and feel that mental heaviness. Your brain has specialized immune cells called microglia. Under normal circumstances, microglia are your brain's cleanup crew. They remove damaged tissue, clear amyloid deposits, and maintain the neurochemical environment. But as we age, microglia shift into a state called M1 polarization. Instead of cleaning, they start releasing pro-inflammatory cytokines, specifically IL-6, TNF-alpha, and IL-1 beta. These molecules don't kill neurons directly. What they do is slower and more insidious. They degrade the myelin sheath, the protective coating around your neural pathways, and when myelin degrades, signal transmission slows. That's the fog. That's the hesitation when you reach for a word. That's the name you can't pull up. That's not aging. That is inflammation, doing measurable documented damage to your brain's wiring. Now here's the part most people miss entirely. This process is bidirectional, meaning, under the right conditions, it can be slowed, and in some cases partially reversed. The research is clear on this. A landmark 2021 study from the University of California, San Francisco, tracked 847 adults over age 65 for 4 years. They found that individuals who successfully reduced systemic inflammatory markers showed statistically significant improvements in processing speed, working memory, and verbal recall. Not minor improvements. We're talking about scores equivalent to turning the cognitive clock back by 5 to 7 years. Let me tell you what that looks like in a real clinical context. Robert is 69 years old. He lives in Texas. He came to me about 14 months ago. His complaint was specific. He said reading used to feel like watching a movie. Now it feels like reading through wet paper. His comprehension was slowing. He was rereading the same paragraphs. His wife noticed he was forgetting conversations they'd had the same morning. When I ran his inflammatory markers, CRP, IL-6, homocysteine, every single one was elevated. This is not rare. In my practice, over 70% of patients presenting with cognitive complaints have measurable systemic inflammation. Robert wasn't broken. His brain was on fire, quietly, invisibly, constantly. If what I'm describing feels familiar to you, the slowness, the fog, the words that vanish mid-sentence, I want you to stop right now and check the pinned comment below this video. I'll explain why in a moment, but don't wait until the end. What's there is directly relevant to what I'm explaining. Now let's talk about the biological levers, because this is where the science gets genuinely interesting. The first lever is BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of BDNF as fertilizer for neurons, It promotes neuroplasticity, synapse formation, and, critically, it counteracts the M1 microglial polarization I described earlier. The problem: BDNF production drops roughly 15 to 20% per decade after age 40. By the time you're 65, you may be operating at less than half the BDNF output of your younger self. Several naturally occurring compounds have been shown in peer-reviewed research to upregulate BDNF expression. Lion's mane mushroom, specifically its heracenins and erinacines, showed a 23% increase in NGF synthesis in a 2020 double-blind trial. Phosphatidylserine has been shown to support BDNF signaling and was actually given FDA-qualified health claim status for cognitive function support. These aren't supplements someone invented. These are compounds with documented mechanisms. The second lever is acetylcholine. This is the neurotransmitter most directly tied to memory encoding and retrieval. When you can't remember a name or a fact that you know, acetylcholine is often the missing link. The precursor to acetylcholine production is a compound called choline, and most adults over 60 are functionally deficient in it without ever knowing. Alpha-GPC is the most bioavailable choline precursor we have. A 2014 study in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition showed meaningful improvements in memory and attention in adults using alpha-GPC supplementation over a 12-week period. The third lever is neuroinflammation control. You cannot build new neural connections in an inflamed environment. It's like trying to paint a room while it's on fire. The most well-studied anti-neuroinflammatory compounds include curcumin, particularly in its phospholipid-bound form for blood-brain barrier penetration, and omega-3 fatty acids, specifically DHA, which is the structural fatty acid of neuronal membranes. A 2022 meta-analysis covering over 3,000 participants found that DHA supplementation was associated with significant reductions in neuroinflammatory biomarkers and improvements in episodic memory in adults over 60. Here's the clinical reality I've arrived at after more than 2 decades in this field. The research behind what I explained today converges on one point. I found a formulation that combines exactly these compounds. The link is in the pinned comment. Bill is 73 years old, from Ohio. He told me his biggest fear wasn't death, it was losing the ability to have a real conversation with his grandchildren. He was losing words mid-sentence. He described feeling like his brain was buffering. 3 months after we addressed his neuroinflammatory profile and supported his cholinergic system, he called my office to say he'd just spent 3 hours playing chess with his grandson and never once lost his train of thought. I'm not telling you that to impress you. I'm telling you because it reflects what the biology predicts when you give the brain what it actually needs. Frank is 71, from Michigan. He was a retired engineer. Precision was part of his identity. He came to me devastated because he'd started making calculation errors, simple ones, the kind he would never have made in his career. His homocysteine was at 18.2, significantly elevated. High homocysteine is directly neurotoxic and is one of the most underdiagnosed drivers of cognitive decline in this age group. With targeted nutritional support and the compounds I described, his homocysteine dropped to 9.4 in 4 months. His mental precision, in his own words, came back online. George is 6'6", from Pennsylvania. He was the skeptic. He told me straight out that he didn't believe supplements did anything. He was a retired pharmacist. He knew the industry. I didn't argue with him. I showed him the mechanistic literature. I showed him the inflammatory cascade. I showed him his own labs. He said, and I'm quoting him, "You're not selling me something. You're explaining something." That's the distinction I care about. This is not a sales pitch. This is biology. George started the protocol with specific expectations based on what the science predicted. 4 months later, he told me his reading comprehension had returned to what he described as normal. That word, normal, hit me, Because losing it quietly is how this starts for most people, and getting it back feels like reclaiming something that was always yours. I want to be precise about what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. I am not promising you a cure. There is no such thing. What I am telling you is that the biological mechanisms I described today are real, documented, and in many cases modifiable. The compounds I referenced are not experimental. They are among the most studied neuroprotective compounds in the peer-reviewed literature. What my patients have reported, again and again, is not magic. It is what happens when the brain's environment shifts from inflammatory to supportive. If you are over 60 and your thinking feels slower than it used to, if words escape you mid-sentence, if you reread the same page and still can't hold it, I want you to understand, that is not who you are. That is not your ceiling. That is a biological state. And biological states can change. Go to the pinned comment right now. The link is there. It's where I've put everything I've referenced today, the research and the formulation that brings these specific compounds together. Don't scroll past it. What happens in the next few years for your brain is not entirely written yet. The research says that clearly. And after 22 years of watching patients reclaim clarity they thought was gone forever, I believe it.